He stood before the council with a smile that was not a smile, a curve of the lips sharpened like a blade, and said in a voice that carried through the vaulted chamber, "Laugh all you want, but when it bites, don't say, 'I didn't warn you.'" They thought him pitiful. A lone man of flesh among beings plated with crystal hide and chitinous armor, bones dense as alloys, wings that could slice air like razors. His skin was bare, easily pierced, his organs unprotected, his blood too quick to spill. To the Valari Council, humanity was a jest in biological form. To Marcus Hale, standing beneath the cold glare of a dozen alien eyes, the jest had grown old. The chamber itself was carved from obsidian harvested from a dying star, polished to a black mirror sheen. Light slithered along its walls, as though reluctant to remain. The Ascendant, flagship of the Valari Accord, floated in orbit above a red gas giant, a place where storms the size of Earth's continents churned endlessly. The audience gathered in the council's amphitheater, Dravari with their segmented bodies clicking in anticipation, feathered Keth with their liquid eyes, Valari elders in robes spun from living silk. All leaned forward, waiting to be entertained. And Marcus, ridiculous Marcus, was their entertainment. They demanded a presentation of Earth's fauna, expecting proof that humanity's homeworld was soft, laughable, a paradise for weaklings. Marcus obliged, though he knew what they wanted, fuel for their scorn. The holoscreens flared to life. A koala clung lazily to a branch, chewing leaves with glazed indifference. Murmurs turned to rumbles of laughter, translated across dozens of throats. "This creature," a Valari elder declared, "is narcotized at birth. Only survives on poison leaves," another hissed. The laughter rolled on, cruel and unrelenting. Marcus kept his composure, though his jaw ticked. He shifted the image, a sloth dangling from a branch, moving with the determination of a drifting cloud. The crowd howled. Next came the platypus. A chorus of disbelief rattled the chamber. "It is indecisive," one alien sneered. "Is it mammal? Bird? Reptile?" "Even its creator must have laughed," another said, trembling with mirth. The chamber rang with the sound of contempt. Marcus let it wash over him. He thought of small-town voices back on Earth. Neighbors who whispered "dreamer" like it was an insult. The ex-wife who told him he was incapable of holding a steady life. The job he'd lost for being unpredictable. Always the laughter. Always the judgment. Now amplified across the stars. When the Valari tired of mocking images, they turned on him. "Your people," said one, voice resonant as a gong, "must be fragile as these beasts. Why should you be admitted to the Accord? What worth is there in a species that cries over entertainment broadcast on, what did you call it, reality television? And ritual feasts involving microwave burritos?" Another added, disdain dripping. The council's laughter rippled again. Marcus let them laugh. Then he leaned on the edge of the podium, voice pitched low, carrying the weight of a threat disguised as jest. "You've seen our soft ones," he said, "but you haven't seen the honey badger." A silence fell. The words meant nothing to them, but the way he spoke them, the way his smile no longer reached his eyes, made something in their bones pause. "Explain," a counselor demanded. Marcus tilted his head. "Better," he murmured. "I'll show you." 2 days later, the observation arena filled. Rows upon rows of alien dignitaries clustered behind force fields, eager for another joke. The floor below shimmered with holographic terrain, a barren plain under an artificial sun. From a crate emerged the creature. Small, low to the ground, a pelt of rough fur, a body squat and unimpressive. Tiny eyes that gleamed with something unfathomable. Malivera capensis, the honey badger. The crowd scoffed. "This is your hidden terror, a mere rodent. Perhaps it entertains with juggling." Marcus stood at the edge, arms crossed, saying nothing. The council released a hollow drone, a predator 30 times the badger's size, claws like blades, jaws rimmed with plasma teeth. The crowd leaned forward, expecting the little beast to cower, to flee. It did not. The honey badger charged. Not away, not circling, straight at the monster's throat. Teeth sank into shimmering shields, claws raked at plating. The drone lashed with enough force to fell a bear, but the badger only shrieked and clamped harder. Sparks flew. Metal shrieked. The crowd's laughter dissolved into gasps. The drone collapsed in a smoking ruin. The badger waddled off, bleeding from its muzzle, and began to lick its paw as if nothing had happened. The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. Marcus's voice cut it. "You see," he said softly, "the honey badger doesn't care. Not about size, not about odds, not even about whether it should win. It just fights, and it keeps fighting, until you're gone, or it is." He let the words settle like ash. "That," he continued, "is Earth. We are soft. We bleed easy. We eat burritos at gas stations and cry at movies. But when mocked, when cornered, when pushed far enough," his gaze swept the chamber, daring them to look away. "We bite back." For a long time, no one laughed. But Marcus knew it was not over. Their silence was temporary. The council still doubted, still wanted proof that his words were not just clever human theater. And so came the trials. Cold. "This isn't cold," Marcus muttered into the visor of his suit, breath fogging against the glass. "This is Minnesota in January, except without a Walmart to hide in." The translators carried his sarcasm across the alien assembly, who struggled to decipher humor wrapped in defiance. The trial was called Endurance of Void. The Valari had dropped him onto Yurn's moon, a desolate sphere where temperatures fell to 70 below, winds sharp enough to carve flesh, air so thin it could suffocate within minutes. They expected him to collapse quickly. Instead, Marcus jogged across the ice flats, knees aching, muttering every human complaint he could muster, as if whining were some strange form of resistance. From their observation tower, the Valari watched. One whispered, "Why does he continue to speak if no one listens?" "Because," another answered grimly, "he listens to himself." Marcus endured. He remembered his boy, how once, at a little league game, the child had stood shivering in cold drizzle. Marcus had shouted from the bleachers, "You keep swinging till the bat breaks." The memory carried him until his suit's heating coils failed and his skin burned from frostbite. Even then, he laughed, bitter and breathless. Could be worse. Could be my ex-wife's idea of a honeymoon. When they retrieved him, he collapsed unconscious, lips blue. But the council murmured uneasily, for he had lasted longer than predicted. The second trial came swiftly. They called it Pain of the Worm. A Scythian blade worm, sleek as polished steel, injected venom into Marcus's arm. The toxin was engineered to shatter willpower, to unspool nerves like twine. The Valari leaned forward, eager. Humans were known for their screams. Marcus staggered, muscles spasming. Pain burned his veins as though fire had been poured into him. His knees buckled, sweat poured down his face. And yet, he laughed. It came out hoarse, cracked, but laughter nonetheless. Florida Man wrestled one of these back home. He gasped, clenching his teeth. The aliens glanced at one another, uncertain. "Florida Man," Marcus groaned, pressing his forehead against the ground. "We thought he was just one. Turns out, he is not." The laughter that followed from the crowd was not mocking, but nervous, brittle, carrying a tremor of something new, fear. They healed him. Barely. The toxin left him trembling, hands shaking like leaves in a storm. Alone in his chamber afterward, Marcus gripped those hands tight. The scars inside him, the old doubts, pressed close. Am I fighting to prove them wrong, or to prove something to myself? But there was no time for answers. The third trial awaited. It was a sealed chamber, stripped of weapons, filled with broken machinery and security turrets armed with stun bolts. No tools, no allies, just him. The Valari intended for him to fail quickly, to demonstrate human helplessness. Marcus cracked his knuckles. Guess it's just me and duct tape. Hours passed. The dignitaries grew restless until the chamber doors hissed open. Marcus emerged clad in makeshift armor cobbled from panels, duct tape binding it like an absurd knight's plating. In his hand, a mug fashioned from stripped wiring and a coolant pipe. Steam curled from it. He sipped with exaggerated satisfaction. Inside, the turrets had been dismantled, repurposed into a generator humming quietly in the corner. This one, a counselor whispered aghast, used duct tape. Another shuddered. We still do not understand duct tape. Even the Volari elders, masters of composure, shifted uneasily. This was not strength, not resilience in the form they respected. This was something more dangerous, ingenuity born from desperation. But trials left Marcus hollow. His body cracked and bruised, his spirit gnawed by the old laughter he carried inside. He wandered to the starport's window one night, staring at the galaxy smeared in silver light. Loneliness pressed against his chest like an old bruise. He thought of his son, his silence, the unanswered calls, of his ex-wife's words, that he was unreliable, incapable of keeping a steady world together. He whispered to the stars, "Maybe I'm just a badger, too dumb to quit." A voice interrupted. "You remind me of a bird," said Naira, one of the younger Volari delegates. She was slender where others of her kind were angular, her crystalline skin refracting starlight into soft blue fire. Marcus turned, surprised. "A bird." She nodded. It nested on the cliffside. The storms destroyed its home. Again and again. Yet it rebuilt. Again, not because it was strongest, but because it would not stop. Her hand hovered, then rested gently on his shoulder. A gesture of quiet solidarity, not pity. Marcus chuckled dry. Volari giving pep talks. Next you'll be quoting Chuck Norris facts. She tilted her head. This Chuck Norris. A warrior. Marcus smirked, though the humor barely hid the tremor of exhaustion. Something like that. Trust me, you don't want to find out. Then came the final trial. They called it the Maw Beast. Bred in gladiator pits, plated hide gleaming like molten iron, saliva hissing where it struck the floor. It filled the arena with the scent of ozone and blood. 3 meters tall, claws serrated like saws. A living nightmare. The crowd expected him to run. Some even wagered he would beg for mercy. Marcus stood still, hands empty. His breath trembled, but his stance was steady. The Maw Beast lunged. The ground shook. Its jaws snapped shut inches from his face. He rolled, barely avoiding, breath ragged. He did not fight it with strength, he could not. Instead, he dodged, provoked, feinted. The beast slammed into walls, roared in fury, lunged again. Each time, Marcus taunted with a rasping laugh. "Come on, big guy. I've dated scarier." The crowd grew restless. The Maw Beast cornered him at last, its jaws descending. Marcus's hand snapped out. Duct tape wrapped across its nostrils in one desperate swipe. The creature thrashed, suffocated, reeling in confusion. Marcus seized a shard of its own broken plating and, with a cry torn from lungs seared with venom and frost, drove it deep into the beast's hide. The Maw Beast collapsed in a shuddering heap. The arena was silent. Marcus, lying bloodied and gasping on the ground, whispered hoarsely, "Now, that's reality TV." The silence broke into murmurs, unsettled and reverent. Naira's gaze met his from a stance. And for the first time, he saw no laughter, no scorn, only awe. "They told me I wasn't fit to babysit a goldfish," Marcus muttered as he leaned on his cane, ribs still bound. "Now an entire galaxy wants me to represent my species. Joke's on them. We can't even agree on pizza toppings." The chamber aboard the Ascendant was silent. The Volari had concluded their trials. Marcus Hale, broken, scarred, yet undefeated, stood at the threshold of judgment. The council's voice rang out. Humanity is accepted into the accord, not for strength, nor for elegance, nor for purity of form, but for defiance. You bleed easily, yet endure. You falter, yet rise. You suffer mockery, yet you laugh. For this you belong. It should have been triumph. Yet Marcus felt only a strange, quiet pressing in his chest. Back home, in his forgotten town, gossip hummed. Some said Hale got lucky. Some muttered, he's still the same fool. But others whispered with reluctant awe, he beat a monster with duct tape. Marcus returned not to glory but to gas stations and cracked sidewalks, to neon signs buzzing faintly in the night. He bought a burrito, sat outside on the curb, and ate beneath the hum of insects. Fame could roar, but solitude still lingered. Two kids walked past, their voices bright with excitement. They say he took down a mob beast with tape. No way. Humans are crazy. Marcus smiled into the dark, crumbs on his jacket. Maybe that was enough. Yet the story did not end in quiet. The Valaria Cord, ever watchful, replayed his trials to other species. Clips of his duct tape ingenuity, his sarcastic defiance under venom, his frost-bitten endurance. He became more than a man. He became symbol, myth, a warning whispered in alien tongues. And symbols carry weight heavier than flesh. One evening, back aboard the Accord station, Naira found him again at the observation window. His shoulders slumped, his breath heavy. "You have given them what they did not expect," she said. Marcus chuckled softly. "A reason to stop laughing? A reason to be wary," she corrected. She paused, then added, "A reason to hope." For a moment, silence bridged them. No declarations. Just her hand resting briefly against his, a gesture fragile and profound. Marcus didn't speak. He only let the connection linger. The final broadcast came weeks later. He stood before a camera, Earth's oceans glimmering in the distance behind him. The galaxy would watch. His voice was steady, laced with dry humor and something deeper. "We're fragile, sure. We break easy. We cry at movies. We burn toast. We get divorced. We eat terrible burritos at 2 a.m. But we also keep going. We build nests on cliff sides, even when storms rip them apart. We fight like honey badgers. We don't stop. So laugh if you want. But remember, eventually we'll bite." He raised a burrito in his hand, a ridiculous toast to the galaxy. The transmission ended, and in the silence that followed, far across worlds, alien hearts stirred uneasily. They had seen strength in size, in armor, in weapons. But now they understood another truth. That weakness, endured and embraced, could sharpen into something fiercer than any blade. Marcus Hale, once mocked as fragile, now carried humanity's defiance like a banner. And though he remained haunted by loss and loneliness, he had found something unbreakable inside himself. The will to endure, to laugh, to rise again. Perhaps you, too, know what it is to feel small, to be dismissed, to eat your burrito in the quiet while others scoff. If so, remember, fragility is not your enemy. It is the soil from which resilience grows. And sometimes, when the storm rages loudest, survival itself is the most defiant roar.